Welcome back to the Paranormal State, Washington, and UFO UAP. With Makāula Nakae, a lifelong experiencer and ET contactee since 1990. Today's episode, July 4th, 1947, United Airlines Flight 105. Summer of 47, when the heavens decided to host a chaotic open house. If you want to pinpoint the exact moment human history careened off the edge of normal and went hurtling into the twilight zone, don't look at a calendar year. Look at a spectacularly weird 2-week stretch in the summer of 1947. Before June of that year, if you reported a strange object in the sky, you were essentially handing your doctor a signed confession that you were ready for a long, quiet stay in a padded room. But by the time July rolled around, the American atmosphere had essentially been thrown wide open, turning the skies into a bumper car arena for things that openly mocked the laws of aerodynamics. The cascade of high strangeness began just as the post-war world was trying to catch its collective breath. It started on June 21, 1947, with the Maury Island incident. A harbor patrol worker named Harold Dahl claimed he saw a donut-shaped craft over Puget Sound dropping molten slag into the water. It was a bizarre, messy beginning that featured everything a conspiracy theorist could want: mysterious men in black shredded metal debris and a crashed B-25 bomber. Then, on June 24th, pilot Kenneth Arnold decided to take his plane for a spin near Mount Rainier and ended up seeing 9 blindingly bright objects skipping across water. He described them as saucer-like, and just like that, a multi-billion-dollar pop culture industry was born. But the sky apparently decided that the 4th of July needed an extra spectacle. While citizens in Richland, Washington were trying to enjoy some legal fireworks, they realized the real show was happening at Mach speed overhead, as glowing, high-speed discs began tracking toward the mountains. And if you think the government could just ignore that, think again. The Flight 105 factor when the professionals joined the party. 10 days after Kenneth Arnold's sighting, the flying saucer wave hit its most critical and terrifying validation. On the evening of Independence Day, while the rest of America was busy eating hot dogs and burning their fingers on sparklers, the crew of United Airlines Flight 105 was having a much more stressful night. Cruising out of Boise, Idaho, in a trusty DC-3, Captain Emil J. Smith and First Officer Ralph Stevens were just trying to get to Oregon. Instead, they found their airspace uncomfortably crowded. As they climbed into the twilight, the pilots watched in stunned professional silence as 4 or 5 flat, circular objects paced their aircraft. These weren't fleeting optical illusions or distant stars. They were structured, massive, and held formation with a commercial airliner with a kind of smug precision that only something from another world, or a very arrogant test pilot, could possess. When the objects finally got bored of the DC-3, they accelerated away into the upper atmosphere, leaving the crew with a front row seat to the fact that their flight plan had just become irrelevant. The psychological impact of Flight 105 was, frankly, seismic. Overnight, the government and the press lost their favorite defense mechanism, calling everyone a crazy mountain hermit. You can call a lone guy in a shack crazy. You can't really do that to a veteran United Airlines crew flying a multi-engine commercial transport. When professional pilots start calling dispatch to report spinning discs in the sunset, the punchline to the joke officially dies. The summer of 1947 proved, once and for all, that the sky was no longer exclusively ours. We had essentially walked into an open house party we weren't invited to, and the modern era of ufology was suddenly strapped into a very, very bumpy ride. At approximately 9:04 p.m., MST, United Airlines Flight 105, a Douglas DC-3 passenger plane, took off from Boise, Idaho, bound for Pendleton, Oregon. In a telling sign of how rapidly the cultural landscape had shifted over the preceding week, the Boise Airport Control Tower jokingly wished the crew good luck and suggested they be on the lookout for flying saucers as they taxied onto the runway. Captain Emil J. Smith reportedly brushed off the remark, remarking that he would believe them when he saw them. Just 8 minutes into the flight, while cruising roughly into the sunset, First Officer Ralph Stevens spotted what he initially took to be approaching military aircraft in the twilight sky. The crew observed a loose, staggered formation of smooth, circular, disc-like objects flying parallel to their altitude. When interviewed later, Captain Smith noted that the objects were thin, smooth on the bottom, and appeared rough or reflective on top. They were traveling at a staggering speed, easily pacing or outpacing the airliner. Recognizing the gravity of what they were witnessing, the cockpit crew called flight attendant Marty Morrow to the flight deck. She immediately corroborated their observation. Watching the strange objects glide through the twilight alongside the aircraft for roughly 10 to 15 minutes across a distance of some 45 miles before the anomalous craft sped away into the distance. The Flight 105 incident instantly transformed the national narrative. Up until July 4th, skeptics and mainstream newspapers could easily dismiss Kenneth Arnold as a lone civilian pilot misidentifying mountain reflections or birds. However, veteran airline pilots with thousands of hours of commercial flight experience staking their professional reputations on a nearly identical sighting shattered that excuse. Within days, media outlets arranged for Kenneth Arnold to meet directly with Captain Emil J. Smith and First Officer Ralph Stevens in Boise. Photographs of the original saucer witness comparing notes with professional airline pilots were splashed across newspapers nationwide, providing an immediate sense of validation that fueled the massive, nationwide UFO wave of July 1947. Predictably, the military intelligence apparatus moved quickly to rationalize the event. The Air Materiel Command eventually concluded that because the sighting occurred at sunset, when optical illusions are most probable, the crew had likely seen ordinary aircraft, birds, weather balloons, or pure psychological suggestion born from the media craze. Yet, for Captain Smith, First Officer Stevens, and Kenneth Arnold, the reality was settled. As Arnold famously noted when reflecting on the encounter, everybody can't be seeing things. I might doubt myself, but I can't doubt such observers as Captain E.J. Smith. The path from Boise, Idaho to Pendleton, Oregon, traversed by United Airlines Flight 105 on July 4, 1947, proved to be more than just a route for a historic pilot sighting. It functioned as an early atmospheric highway for anomalous activity during the summer of 1947. The region bridging southwestern Idaho, eastern Oregon, and central Washington became a hotbed of high strangeness reports as the flying saucer craze exploded nationwide. The psychological and physical weight of Flight 105 sighting was magnified when the exact same corridor yielded additional reports. July 28, 1947 sighting. Just weeks after Captain Emil J. Smith and First Officer Ralph Stevens had their landmark encounter, another pair of airline pilots aboard Flight 105 reported spotting a disc-like object along a similar stretch of their flight path. This repetition underscored that the initial Independence Day sighting was not a singular, isolated optical illusion, but part of a repeating pattern of interaction in the Pacific Northwest skies. The July 4th sighting served as the ultimate catalyst for the broader 1947 wave. Because Flight 105 involved professional commercial pilots with spotless reputations, public skepticism crumbled. Over the next 5 to 10 days following the Boise to Pendleton encounter, the United States witnessed an unprecedented spike, logging over 800 widely publicized UFO sightings within a matter of weeks. The Roswell collision, early July 1947. Right in the immediate wake of the Flight 105 sighting, the events at Roswell, New Mexico, unfolded during a severe storm, culminating in the military's famous July 8 press release. The proximity of these events created a collective national consciousness entirely focused on the skies. When looking at why the Boise-Pendleton-Yakima corridor became such a magnet, researchers often point to the unique geographic and energetic signature of the Pacific Northwest. Stretching from the Snake River plains of Idaho across the Columbia Plateau to the Cascade Volcanic Arc, Mount Rainier, Mount Adams, and Mount Hood, this region combines immense open air spaces, radical elevation changes, heavy military-industrial infrastructure such as the nearby Hanford atomic site, and deep tectonic fault lines. To early witnesses like Kenneth Arnold, Captain Smith, and the crews flying the Pacific Northwest mail and passenger routes, the skies were revealing a hidden layer of reality, turning a routine commercial flight path into the front line of modern ufology. To be continued. Watch and listen. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full podcast now. Explore the archive Cosmic Awakening Volume 1, 1991, Peru, Journey into the Unknown. Sacred Valley of the Incas. Volume 2, Ascension 2012, The Golden Alchemy. Part 3, The First Contact and the Paranormal State. Join the journey. New episodes drop periodically. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 10 to 30-minute exploration into the evolution of ufology, perfect for your daily plunge into decoding hidden messages from outer space, designed to raise awareness and foster human evolution. Subscribe to support your inner development. Thumbs up to help push our channel through the algorithm. Comment below. Share your thoughts on today's episode.